A new humanity can be constructed, based on an alternative history. It will be much better than old humanity, based on the actual history of humanity. With a few changes to history, humanity could have turned out radically differently, and far superior. Western history is in many ways a tale of two emperors, Constantine, 272 AD to 337 AD, and Julian the Apostate, 331 AD to 363 AD. Had Constantine died at the Battle of Milvian Bridge, Rome would never have adopted Christianity, and Christianity would have died out, or been a tiny peripheral sect like Gnosticism. Julian the Apostate was a keen advocate of Neoplatonism. Had he not died young, he might have reversed the Christian nightmare. World history would have turned out fundamentally differently given that Neoplatonism is enormously more intellectual than Christianity. As for Judaism, if it had been based on Enoch and the Book of Enoch rather than Moses and the Torah, it would have been entirely different, and much closer to paganism. Without Judaism and Christianity, there would have been no Islam. Think of all the trouble humanity would have been spared without Abrahamism. Abrahamism has warped the human psyche to an incredible degree. Had Pythagorean reincarnation been the accepted form of reincarnation, we would have been spared karma and the Hindu caste system, and also the bizarre notion of reincarnation in Buddhism, based on the reincarnation of the non-self rather than the eternal soul, so that it's impossible to define what it is that is supposedly undergoing reincarnation. Had Simon Magus been the Messiah rather than Jesus Christ, we would have had a Gnostic rather than Christian world. Had the world preferred Leibniz to Newton, we would have had scientific rationalism and idealism, revolving around mind and reason, rather than scientific empiricism and materialism, revolving around matter and the senses. Had the world preferred positive to negative liberty, Plato, Rousseau and Hegel would have triumphed rather than free market capitalism, Ayn Rand and libertarianism. Had Hegel's ideas been implemented in the true form of dialectical idealism rather than Marx's inverted, false form of dialectical materialism, communism would not have been the opponent of capitalism, but, rather, Gnostic idealism and rationalism would have stood against capitalist materialism. With just a few changes in the course of history, the world would be a drastically different place, much better suited to the advance and rule of logos. As it is, the world is entirely under the power of mythos. We need a system that explicitly opposes Abrahamism, karmism, and scientific materialism, and puts humanity on the path it should have taken in the first place. Many people might be receptive to the idea that the world could have developed entirely differently, both religiously and scientifically. There is no reason for the world to be as it is. It can be totally transformed. Humanity took the wrong turn, the wrong fork in the road, the wrong path, the wrong branch of the dialectic, and headed for hell rather than heaven. It became a false humanity, a lower humanity. It headed towards the beasts rather than the gods. It focused on desire rather than reason. It rejected the mind and worshipped the body. It was emotional rather than intellectual. It was sensory rather than intuitive. It looked down rather than up. However, all of this can be reversed. Every error can be corrected. We can look back at history, see where the wrong decisions and choices were made, always the mythos decisions and choices, and implement the correct decisions and choices, those of logos. Human history has thus far been the history of error, driven by people being led by emotional stories rather than by intelligence. There is no need for these systemic errors. We can produce an enlightened world, provided we grasp the simple truth that reason and logic rather than bizarre, irrational, illogical stories and beliefs should direct the evolution of the human mind, culture and society. We live in a Dunning-Kruger world whereby mythos people believe themselves smart, and consider smart people, logos people, stupid. When stupid ideas, stupid beliefs, stupid stories, and stupid people are running the world, why should we be surprised that this is stupid world? The idiocracy is here, and it's real. The horror of the human condition is reflected in just how much intelligent people are hated or ignored. Math, the supreme intellectual, rational and logical subject, is the most hated and feared subject on earth. People would much rather believe the Bible than read a book on Fourier mathematics. If everyone on earth understood Fourier math, and ignored and hated the Bible, we would be living in paradise. Tragically, it's the other way around. It's always the other way around. Humanity is inverted, back to front, always looking the wrong way, always reaching the wrong conclusions, always rejecting the only tools for doing things right, reason and logic. Reason is the devil's whore, screamed Martin Luther on behalf of all Protestants, and that sums up humanity's attitude to reason. How can reason be made more attractive to the mythos masses? How can Logos people outsmart the mythos gang? We can understand them, but they can't understand us. They can't park their tanks on our lawns, but we can on theirs. That gives us an overwhelming advantage. They can't do math, science, and philosophy, but we can certainly do big, powerful stories. Humanity still has the potential to develop in a radically different way from the current disaster. Imagine a different humanity carving out a different path through history, the path humanity should have taken, i.e., the one free of Abrahamism, karmism and materialism, the one based on reason and logic rather than mad stories told by madmen and psychopaths. Humanity, sadly, will not be freed of its current mythos hell via Logos. It must first be provided with a better mythos, one much more closely aligned with Logos, one that rejects faith and instead pursues ultimate knowledge, gnosis. An alternative humanity requires an alternative mythos. It needs a what-if scenario showing that humanity would now be living in paradise rather than hell if our ancestors had made the right, enlightened choices. Above all, our ancestors should have stuck with paganism and Greek philosophy. We want to establish a clear choice between new and old humanity, higher and lower humanity, humanity that knows how to do the right things and humanity that invariably does the wrong things. Higher humanity would have made very different choices at pivotal points in history, and it can still make these rational choices retrospectively, i.e., the alternative history is in a sense still part of actual history, and shadows actual history, and we can still switch to it, i.e., to paganism, Pythagoras, Plato, Julian the Apostate, Leibniz, Hegel, and so on. Its time is to construct a vast, beguiling mythos, the ultimate mythos. Unlike the current mythos that rules the world, our mythos must be easily transitioned to Logos, which is our ultimate objective. We want to seduce the world with this mythos. However, nothing can be achieved unless a fun, enticing lifestyle can be constructed that changes the world as comprehensively as sex, drugs and rock and roll did in the 60s. The 60s lifestyle did incredible damage to conservatism and authoritarianism, and gave birth to liberalism and anti-authoritarianism. It did absolutely nothing, however, to get rid of mythos religions, materialism, and predatory free market capitalism. It certainly didn't usher in a sane, rational new world. In many ways, it just made an even bigger mess. Sex, drugs and rock and roll changed the world, but not for the better, given the self-evident state of today's world. How can this revolution be re-implemented, but this time with far better outcomes? If the right lifestyle is established, everything else follows. Lifestyle drives everything. If the wrong lifestyle is constructed, we get all of its dreadful consequences. The optimal humanity is the one that chooses the optimal lifestyle. There's nothing optimal about Abrahamism, karmism and materialism. The construction of a brand new lifestyle, designed to have the optimal outcomes, is a fantastically difficult problem, requiring the most brilliant practical psychology. Like Islam, it needs its own rituals, uniforms, prohibitions, incentives, special months, special days, special pilgrimages, special customs, etc. It must have people thinking about it all of the time. They must fully internalize it. It must always be on their minds. They can have no downtime, no off time from this lifestyle. It must be all-consuming, and very obviously the right way to spend a life, to define a life well lived. Only grand projects are worth the time and effort. Any small-scale exercises aren't going to work. They won't make any dents in people's existing lifestyles, which are not at all conducive to our cause. Logos will never succeed through the preaching of logos. People hate logos. Machiavelli said, "It must be considered that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle, than to initiate a new order of things. For the reformer has enemies in all those who profit by the old order, and only lukewarm defenders in all those who would profit by the new order, this lukewarmness arising partly from fear of their adversaries, who have the laws in their favor, and partly from the incredulity of mankind, who do not truly believe in anything new until they have had the actual experience of it. The seductive lifestyle gets people to do the things you want, without you having to do anything to persuade them. How many people resisted the world of sex before marriage? As soon as they were offered it, people grabbed it and loved it. That's what we need to accomplish. We give people a lifestyle, and then they embrace it, can't get enough of it, and constantly proselytize on its behalf. We don't have to do any work at all. Like the brooms of the sorcerer's apprentice, they do all of the work themselves. The perfect system is the one that is self-sustaining, which requires no further input. Muhammad has been dead for 1,400 years, yet still controls 1.5 billion people alive today, and the number is growing. That is the testimony to the power of his creation. People eagerly embrace an enjoyable lifestyle. They are very resistant to adopting a new ideology, a new philosophy, a new worldview. We have to get buy-in from people. We have to totally transform people, just as religious conversion does. We can't have people treating the new system, the new order, as a fringe interest, which they can take or leave, and which leaves their core lifestyle and worldview unchanged. It's not ideologies and philosophies that succeed, it's identities and lifestyles. Or, rather, ideologies can succeed only if they're integrated with identities and lifestyle. Islam is not a religion. It's an all-embracing political, economic, legal and social worldview and lifestyle, which is why it's in constant conflict with liberal capitalist democracy. At the moment, the only lifestyle to which logos is attached is that of academics, who are ignored by the public. Logos can never succeed unless it is attached to a self-sustaining mainstream lifestyle, which sells itself and gathers more and more support without any action required on our part. It's much easier to lure people to a new lifestyle than to a new ideology. The lifestyle is the Trojan horse that allows logos to be inserted into the citadel of the enemy, take them by surprise, then conquer them. Constructing the right lifestyle is the problem we must crack.